Joining us now for a chat on the President's assent and, of course, the signing of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law is Andrew Mamedu. He's the Country Director, ActionAid. He's joined by Farouk Ibrahim of the Africa Program Coordinator, Yaga Africa. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the news tonight. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us.
Let me start with you, Mr. Mamedu. I think I saw you on the protest ground at the National Assembly yesterday. But, I mean, things have changed in the last 24 hours. Now we have a new law for electoral processes. Given the controversy that surrounded the whole process, did you expect President Tinubu to sign it today? And do you have any surprises?
99% yesterday, I think I said somewhere that 99% chances that the president is going to sign it. He's not going to withhold his assent on it. So the president did not surprise us. So there were no surprises. And this is further verified with the speed upon which it is signed. This is less than 24 hours, 120 something pages, and in less than 24 hours. So let me tell you the process. So once a bill comes out, it goes to the president for assent. The president has got a team. The minimum is the Attorney General must go through it, and it takes its time. That's why the law allows the president up to 30 days to either sign it or send it back to the assembly. So, but this was done within 24 hours. And this kind of bill, so we've spoken to INEC. In the past, a copy is also sent to INEC to review and go through it and say, yes, this is fine, this is okay, we can implement this and all of that. So INEC is supposed to have a say. The Minister of Finance is supposed to also look at it and say, are there financial implications? Can we fund those financial implications that are coming up from the bill? And before the president then goes ahead to sign or not to sign. But it looks like both the executive and the legislators developed this bill together, debated it together, and at the end of the day, passed it together, and of course, signed it together. So, and this is all against overwhelming majority of Nigerians, particularly one clause. There are beautiful parts of the act right now. Yeah. One of them is citizens can actually now print their voters card online. You can go to INEC website and print your voters card and then use it. So you don't have to, those long queues we have, so those will be eliminated. So that being said, it's not total knock for the bill. So, however, the most important part of the bill still remain. The Senate version still remains. So the question is, what do we do about that? So for us, it's very simple. As civil society, we are rejecting that particular aspect, and it's okay. It's been signed. It's an act. We're not going to say so. It's a law right now, but we can do an amendment. So as early as tomorrow, we can send an amendment. So a senator can raise an amendment. The House of Rep member, even the president, can raise an amendment to the current act as we have it on that particular clause.
So we'll keep amending and re-amending. I mean, like the president said in his speech there's no perfect system, because at the end of the day, it is humans that will actually run it. But let me bring you in, Farouk Ibrahim of Yaga. How do you think this law would impact the credibility of future elections in Nigeria, considering all that has played out and the speed, of course, with which the president has signed? And Mamedu here has said, he walked us through the process. It's supposed to take a whole lot more before the president finally, puts pen to paper.
Thank you so much for having us. Maybe just to answer your question very quickly, it's a question around credibility.
Right.
And I think that at the core of the advocacy by citizens groups and civil society organizations is to ensure that we have a more credible process, a more legitimate process, a process that citizens can trust and have more confidence in. And a lot of this is hinged on the electronic transmission of results, like we've been speaking about, which is in section 60
of 3
of the Act. Unfortunately, what was signed into law today by the president contains that proviso that was passed in the Senate version that says where electronic transmission fails, we will revert to the form EC8A. The implication of this is that we are almost going back. We're taking a step back. We're retrogressing in the credibility of this process. We have seen electronic transmission take place time and time again. However, it was not clearly in the law, the electoral law as we had it. So what this means for us now with this proviso is that it also creates some more confusion around, one, the hierarchy and the legitimacy if it goes to court, because it begs the question that if electronic transmission fails, which takes precedence or which takes hierarchy? Right. Is it the electronic version, or is it the manual version? And a lot of this advocacy for a credible election has been that we need to use more technology to ensure that there's credibility of the process, to ensure that when we go to the collation process, if there are any alterations to the results that come from the various polling units, we can go back to what is on IREV, what has been electronically transmitted, and we can see that this is the correct results from the different polling units, and that improves the credibility of the process. Unfortunately, we did not get that passed, even though there are some other amendments within the current law that help to improve things around voter participation, but there are also some challenges when it comes to funding for INEC, which is also a credibility challenge for us. So it almost seems like we have taken one step forward, but maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 steps back.
Well, Mamedu, we had the uncut edit of the president's speech today play, about 4 minutes plus. And the president repeatedly said, you cannot remove human interference in the process, and says it is time Nigerians begin to have faith and trust the system. When you hear the president say that, and then the president of the Senate then goes after to say, what they have done, is to improve transparency and accountability, because despite the proviso, for the first time we're having electronic transmission, and then Nigerians can cast their ballot and be sure to cross-check what they have with what is uploaded eventually. Do you agree with them that there was any sense of accountability and transparency put into this process in all that has been done? And when the president says you cannot erase human interference in the system at all, despite technology, do you agree with them?
Yes and no. So I think the first thing is to say that we're not saying that there will not be human interference or involvement in the process, but as much as possible, we want to minimize it. And we have looked at our electoral system over the years. It used to be at the voting unit, so you just don't print and all of that. But with the coming of Beavers, which of course has been encoded right now, you are accredited. And even when we started with Beavers, we had the what do you call the form, the form that you can incident form that you can use to bypass if you're not able.
Like what we've gone back to
now. No. So for right now, the 2022 Act, so even with the 2022 Act, we does not allow incident form.
Right.
So you must be there. So if the machine is not working, it's not able to accredit you either by thumbprint or your face then the new machine will be brought to do that. So we have gone past that. So you cannot manipulate that system. So technology has dealt with that. But where our challenge is, the biggest challenge has been from the issues of transmission. When we finish counting our vote, like the president rightly said, we will count it manually. The machine is not going to do that. Once we finish counting it, and it's 520, between when we transmit the result with the form, take the result with the form, from the polling units to the collation center, 520 turns to 5,200.
The magic happens.
The magic happens. So we're saying, how do we eliminate that? And we have a machine which we use for accreditation with or without network. With or without network. It is time-stamped, so it's been tested, and we've used this where we had 93% accuracy result transmission. And we didn't have issues with that in off-cycles election. So if we have done those, we have seen those results before, why don't we capture the form? We are not discarding the form. The form should still go for the collation, but what should be primary in terms of if there's discrepancy, let's look at what the machine has captured.
Right.
That is what we are saying, and let's remove that clause, because with what Farouk said, actually, if you go to court, because we have this once bitten, twice shy, we've gone through this process before, and the court says, sorry, we cannot accept this because IREV is not encoded in the law, and that's why we went through this whole process to make sure that it's encoded and we follow it all till the end. And this is not the end, like I said. So we are going to call on Nigerians, we're going to call on citizens to come out. So we're having meetings, civil society, citizens group, we're having meetings. So like we said, let us push for a new amendment. You can amend the law even if it's 1 day old.
For a more perfect electoral act. Farouk Ibrahim, we seem to be fixated with this clause 60 sub 3, but there's another clause that really should be of concern. I wonder if it's of concern to you. Clause or section 84 that recommends how nominees are elected by the parties. It talks about direct and
consensus,
leaving out the indirect that used to be part of it. Do you have any concerns? Because what it says clearly is that a political party seeking to nominate candidates for elections under this bill shall hold primaries for aspirants to all elective positions which shall be monitored by the Commission. And secondly, the procedure for the nomination of candidates by political parties for the various elective positions shall be by direct primaries or consensus, just like we said. Are there any concerns? Because what this seems to look like is that it's forcing political parties to choose their nominees or candidates this way, in spite of what the Supreme Court has said, that parties have the right to, decide whatever mode they like.
I think the greatest concern in this clause is for political parties, because this is a clause that speaks directly to political parties and how it is going to affect the candidate selection process within the political parties, as well as the internal party dynamics. Like you've said, the Supreme Court has ruled one way. We have the Electoral Act, or the Electoral Bill or the law now, that has also mandated that primaries shall be conducted either through direct primaries or through a consensus. And it's a challenge that political parties are going to have to deal with. It seems like members of the National Assembly probably did not pay as much attention to this clause as they should have, or in some sort of political arrangement to remove power from some certain individuals in the political parties to ensure that with the direct primaries, all the members of the political parties are able to, as much as possible, determine who becomes the candidate for. It has its merits and its demerits. And when we talk about the demerits, for instance, because very few political parties have a compiled register of members of their parties who would be required to participate in a direct primaries. But when it comes to the consensus, there's also the merit about who the power holders are within these political parties towards determining who the candidates are for the various offices.
All right. Mamedu, you have the last word here. Very quickly, same question. Some say it's perhaps the governing party that has the majority in the National Assembly that is imposing the system on other political parties. And then when you say you are calling on Nigerians to come out for another amendment of this law that has just come into existence, do you also put into consideration the election timetable and the implications of that for INEC that has to deal with an amendment bringing the dates forward already?
Oh, okay, so let me start with the last
Very
part.
quickly, yes.
So quickly, we will not tamper with the 300 days, so let it start counting.
Okay.
However, the particular clause we're not comfortable with, particularly the one around transmission of results, we could just go with that alone. So other aspects of the act as it stands becomes law, and the INEC can start running with that. You don't need to operationalize this until close to the election. Okay. So why don't we, and of course we have seen the president sign a bill in 24 hours, so we can also get
it's
it
doable,
in 48 hours and get the president to sign it.
And the other question
calling Nigerians out, out. Of course, civil society, we are having meetings tomorrow, we are continuing our conversation and all of that. But citizens should be ready to, of course, come out. This is about our
own the system, right?
And the mode of selecting candidates in political parties, very quickly, to respond to the question he answered.
Okay, so the bigger picture is if political parties go ahead in manipulating all this, and you have godfatherism at the Abuja level responding to these things, by the time citizens have the power to decide who becomes their leader, they will vote those political parties out. Then the political parties will have to align and be very democratic so that citizens will vote for them.
Okay, Andrew Mamedu, Country Director, ActionAid, and Farouk Ibrahim, Africa Program Coordinator, Yaga Africa. Thank you both of you gentlemen for joining us.
Thank you.